Hi, thank you so much for joining me again. Well, I say again, if you're on part two here of a little series, so I'm assuming that you're joining me again. If not, you probably need to go back and watch part one. This is called The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. And today, last time, on part one, we ended with the idea that we have to get all in or in with one side or the other. And the sides are basically the world or God, the world system, which is really run, I don't know, by the God of this age, the God of this world, who is Satan. We all start off in his kingdom, and we have to actually be brought out of that kingdom, and that's by way of the cross. I'll just throw this in there for you today. According to Colossians, it says that God himself has rescued us, and he has translated us out of the kingdom of darkness, out of the dominion of darkness, into the kingdom of his dear Son. And we have redemption and forgiveness of sins there. So that's the good news. But today we're going to look at how did this kingdom of darkness get started? What brought about this world system that is occupied by fallen man and ran in a fallen world by a rebellious spirit of error, the spirit that's working or operating in the sons of disobedience. That's what it says in Ephesians 2. That's what we looked at last week, or last week. Timeless videos, man. I don't want to get caught up in that. So we're going to stick to the Word. Isaiah 14 is where we're going to start today. Where did this world system originate? Where did it come from? And what did it come out of? If you're a Bible student, then you'll know that Isaiah 14 is where we find what most people believe who Satan was prior to him becoming Satan, the adversary, the enemy. And most people say it was Lucifer. And he was a shiny one. He was meant to be an imager of God. He was meant to be a reflection of God, just like we are. But something happened. Something went wrong. He had some kind of rebellious or evil intention that was found inside of him. A lot of debate and discussion about where that got started or where that came from. And that's not exactly what I'm trying to do here today. But I do want to show you what was the origin of this rival kingdom to God's kingdom. Isaiah 14:12 through 14 tells us this. Excuse me. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Wow. So, most people believe this is ultimately talking about Lucifer, who became Satan because of this right here. He was removed from his position of guardian cherub, or he was a cherubim. He was a high-ranking official in the heavenlies. That's what we can gather. And apparently he wanted to overthrow the leader, who we know as Yahweh, the God, the creator of all things. Well, he wanted to make himself like God. He wanted to exalt himself above God. So he saw himself as very capable and powerful enough to do such a thing, which, wow, what a deception. How self-deceived can you be? Well, all you got to do is look in the mirror. We've all been there. We've all bitten into this lie, which is explained to us in more detail in Genesis chapter 3. And we will get there in this video today. So in Isaiah 14, we see the seeds, the origins of this rebellion and this fall of Lucifer. Now, look over in Ezekiel 28. We'll see a chapter that's sort of a counterpart to the one in Isaiah 14. Gives us a little more detail about how he fell. Ezekiel 28, 13 through 18 says this. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering: the ruby, the topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the lapis lazuli, the turquoise, and the emerald, and the gold. The workmanship of your settings and sockets was in you. On the day that you were created, they were prepared. Wow. You were the anointed cherub who covers, and I placed you there. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked in the midst of the stones of fire. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. By the abundance of your trade, you were internally filled with violence, and you sinned. Therefore I have cast you as profane from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom by reason of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I put you before kings that they may see you. By the multitude of your iniquities, in the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your sanctuaries. Therefore I have brought fire from the midst of you. It has consumed you, and I have turned you to ashes on the earth. In the eyes of all who see you, all who know you among the peoples are appalled at you, and you have become terrified, and you will cease to be forever. That went through 19. I got a little carried away, didn't I? But notice he was in the garden of God. He was in Eden, and he was covered in precious stones. He was a shiny, beautiful creature, and we know he was a creature because in verse 13 it says you were created. See, God is the creator. Everything else, the creation is not going to overthrow the creator. So there's definitely some big-time deception found in him. But he got so enamored with himself, is the implication here, and he started thinking he was all that. You know, God made him blameless and beautiful, but he got enamored with himself. He was given a role to play as a vessel or a reflector or an imager of God, and he was right there, as close as you can get to God in his position of a covering cherub. He was in a great place, a wonderful place. But he got full of himself. In some way, he started thinking it was about him. And how many of us have been there, where we forget that we're just a vessel, and that in ourselves we have no power to be like God? We can't be like God. We can't make ourselves like the Most High. I mean, that is the root of deception and sin, is it not? Independence from God, thinking I can make myself with what I have, which, by the way, I don't have anything apart from what he's given me, and neither did Lucifer, who became Satan. He was operating completely as a receiver of God's gifting, and yet he started to think it was his own. He started to think that his own power and his own wealth, his own intelligence or giftedness, that somehow he started thinking that he had done this. You know, there's a story that walks this out in mankind in real time in the book of Daniel, and there's a king in there. His name is Nebuchadnezzar, and it tells a story of him looking around at the kingdom, and he said, it was by my own strength and power. My hands built this kingdom. I'm the king. I'm the one that did this. And he ended up living about 7 years like an animal, and he lost his mind. And then finally one day he came around, and he declared Yahweh. He declared God, the true God, and he said it was really by your power and your hand, and it's not me at all. And God restored him, put him in his right mind, and from then on he pointed others to God, not to himself. That's where we all got to get to, isn't it? But this is how Satan, Lucifer fell, became Satan. This is how Satan became the god of this age, the prince of the air. He did this because he got man, Adam, to come into agreement with him. But in Genesis 3, we see that story. So he perverted God's word. He twisted it. He manipulated Adam and Eve into giving him authority in their life. And the world system was conceived. It was brought to the earth through this fallen one, this shiny one that lost his place. And he managed to get man, the corporate head, Adam, who represented us all, to agree with him. So I want to show you that. It should be common to most Bible students, but I would like to read it for you. Genesis 3, verse 4 through 7. It says, "The serpent said to the woman, 'You surely will not die.'" See, so Eve is having a conversation with the serpent, telling him, "I'm not supposed to mess around with this tree." And the serpent says, "Surely you will not die, for God knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate, and she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. Oh my gosh, so much going on here. So Lucifer fell. He was an anointed cherub. He got enamored with himself. He started thinking that it was by his own power, wit, and might that he became so great and wonderful. And he started thinking he could be like God. He could do a better job than God. He could make himself like the Most High. So when we see this serpent in the garden talking to our forefathers, Adam and Eve, he's telling them the same. He's selling them the same line, and they do the same thing he did. They buy into it. And he says, "Oh, come on, you do this, just come on board with me, and you will be like God." In other words, you'll be independent. You'll be like me, which he really wasn't. No one's independent but God himself. We're all derived from him. He created us. We came out from him. He breathed us out. He designed and fashioned us himself. He's the creator. We're the creation. And we can never be the creator. We can't make ourselves like the creator. We can't make ourselves better. We can't improve ourselves. What we can do is we can come to the discovery, the realization, the revelation that God created us to be imagers. He created us to be vessels, temples, and branches that we might display or express him, that he could bear his fruit and his life and his qualities or his character or whatever in us, through us, to the world. Excuse me. So Adam and Eve found themselves fallen. Their eyes were open and they saw that they were naked. Their covering had been removed. Their real covering, which is the glory of God, had been removed. So they ran to hide. Now why would they run and hide? Well, not only was there shame and guilt involved, I think that the reality was that they were linked up to a rebellious, disobedient spirit in that moment, and they really found themselves at odds. You know, in Romans it says that while we were enemies, and in Colossians I think it says the same thing, enemies in our mind. So it wasn't just fallen or lost, but we were actively engaged in enmity, open warfare with our Creator, because we were trying to be our own God. Well, God, what king? No earthly king is going to put up with that. An earthly king is going to squash his rivals. He's going to say, "This is my kingdom." And if an earthly king is going to act that way, what do you think God's going to do? He's going to say, "Oh no, there's only one God, and it's me. It's not you. So you got to cease and desist. This is my kingdom. This is my stuff. I'm the Creator." So Adam found himself in a rivalry with the one true God. And so Satan becomes the prince or ruler of this world, because God had given mankind dominion, and then man in turn somewhat, I guess, he gave it over to Satan. He allowed him to be his ruler. And you see in John 12:31, where Jesus tells us that the ruler of this world is going to be cast out by way of the cross. And John 14:30, he calls him the prince. Let's just look at this real quick here. John 12:31 says, "Now judgment is upon this world. Now the ruler of this world will be cast out." So Jesus is telling them that he's going to lose his job here too. In John 14:30, Jesus says, "I will not speak much more with you, for the ruler of the world is coming, and he has nothing in me." See, Jesus, he had nothing, no hold in Jesus. Jesus was not part of, in a sense anyway, he wasn't part of fallen man. He didn't have an earthly father that passed on Adam's sinfulness to him. He was born of a virgin, but he was God's son, born of Mary as a virgin, and this is how God bypassed this handing down of this rebellion and this wrong spirit that dwelt. That wrong spirit didn't dwell in Jesus. He and his Father were one. So, and then in John 16:11, Jesus said concerning judgment, because the ruler of this world has been judged. So the prince of this world, the ruler of this world, the god of this age, the prince of the power of the air, the spirit working in the sons of disobedience, he has been taken care of by way of the cross. But in our order of events here, we hadn't got there yet, so but I do want to throw that in there. Don't ever forget that. So they run to hide. But then the world system is really birthed or brought about through Cain. It's sort of conceived with Adam, but really it's in Cain. When Adam and Eve have Cain and Abel, and Cain kills Abel, it's really brought about fully here. I want to read 2 verses for you, and this is how we're going to end this one, and we're going to pick up with this in the next video. In Genesis 4:16 and 17, look what it says here. After Cain had killed Abel, and God confronted Cain about this, it says, Genesis 4:16 and 17, Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain had relations with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch, and he built a city and called the name of the city Enoch after the name of his son. So, I want you to notice a couple things. Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and then he built this city. And it was built east of Eden. So this is the beginnings. This is the starting point of the world system, which means away from God, apart from, in place of God. Wow, he went out from the presence of the Lord. He set up a rival substitute system, which is the world system that we're talking about. I hope you will tune in to the next video and find out a little more detail of what this entails. It's pretty remarkable how it's all laid out right there in the scripture. And I don't know, if you're like me, you probably haven't noticed it so clearly before, but we're going to talk about it in the next video. I hope you'll join me there for The World, the Flesh, and the Devil Part 3. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next Louie File.